the diaspora. That is that, for instance, we have put women for quite a lot of time. And towards the end of last year, we had meetings, online meetings with the special rapporteurs to propose 7 special rapporteurs have agreed that the 2 governments negotiated illegally or unlawfully has committed a genocide to address all components of making good or repairing the damage caused entities. So, thank you.
One more question. I want to discuss your blood pressure. So, thank you. The last question. Thank you.
Yeah, my question really is about how do we, when we take into account the hundreds of years that, African people in our various indigenous nations and communities on the continent, and also our communities outside of the continent, the Kilombos, the Palenques, the Maroon communities, have actually been trying to use the frameworks of our enemies, to seek justice and have, up to today, we have younger generations coming up that, can see no prospect of justice being done to them. How morally justified are those of us of the older generation? How morally justified are we to be prescribing for them the same pathways when the experience of other people demonstrate that it takes power of oppressed people to change oppressive systems to attain certain degrees of freedom? So for me, I think maybe particularly the leaders that we have today, whether be the ones imposed upon us through the artificial nation states, that coloniality has left behind, in Africa and other parts of the colonized world, or the indigenous community leaders who are like you, our paramount chief. I think if we continue to prescribe or point in the direction of ways of, of fighting for or seeking justice for us, that lead to nowhere. I mean, aren't we discrediting ourselves? Aren't we pointing to pathways which will condemn many more generations to futile pursuits that yield nothing? But also, isn't that a mark of the cowardice of the older generations, that instead of taking the pathway of resistance which our ancestors have tried and have at least won their dignity, right? Instead of that, we continue to prescribe to younger generations pathways which for the next, millennia, there's no prospect of us winning anything. And we can look at the examples that others have taken. Today, the hopes of oppressed people lie in the fact that after centuries of colonial domination, there is a China rising, right? There is a Korea rising, there's a Vietnam rising, right? And they paid for their right to be equal shapers of the world today in blood, but today there are generations of Chinese people who can say that no more and intervene in reshaping the world with their own power, not begging those who colonize them to do anything for them. So with these clear examples that are there, a small nation like Vietnam that fought to gain its right to reunify itself, right? And saw America packing in disgrace from their land, right? Korea that continues to resist. And today, nobody dare threaten Korea or talk to them in ways they talk to us as African people.
Yes.
Right? You know, what rights do we, the older generation, have? You know, to be pointing to younger generations pathways of seeking justice that will continue to dehumanize our people, you know, for forever. I mean, for me, that's a serious question. You know, isn't us the older generation wanting to pass on our cowardice to them? You know, when we are part of generations that have seen other people like us take their pathways to win freedom and dignity. You know, so for me, that's the question. And also, a part of that is it not because we have leaders who are still just looking at what their narrow little communities can do instead of unifying with others like them to build the power to effect change? So that, for me, that's a critical question that needs to be asked in a space like this, because there are pathways which we are not taking, and largely because of misleadership. And I wouldn't recommend that to our younger generation.
Thank you.
Okay, so, I mean, how do you hear this? I repeat some of the rest of the. So,
I guess I got some, I didn't get to the speech, but I'm reading here.
okay.
In short, the first question or comment was on the architects by or to Kenya or to communities in Kenya, a fight that has been waged by veterans of that atrocities committed against the people of Kenya. The question, I think, is as people are aging and dying out, how easy is it that this fight for returns is to actually materialize? That's how I got the question. I'm not so sure that's correct. This should not be a fight of individuals. It's a collective fight. It's a fight because the damage is not to individuals. The damage is to the collective group. So even if some fighters are not living for long, the remaining group must continue to fight for that. I know they pay sometimes, even in the pay here, one of the questions that was being put forward, they were saying, look, Heroes and Namas that were victims of genocide, they are dead. In all of it, so who will be paid? Because if you look to the Kenyan case, individuals who are alive were paid. In most cases, for the Jewish communities, also those who were alive were compensated or restituted or paid. Now, what happens in the Hero and Nama case, where everybody who was affected is not alive? So that's a wrong understanding as to who is affected. It's the collective, it's the generations, the intergeneration trauma and poverty and damages that continue to accrue over generations. Because those that have benefited from the wars of genocide 100 years ago are still benefiting to the day to day. So the collective is the focus. One hopes that communities are organizing themselves as groups of communities, either or nations of those countries, that then would fight. I don't think this is a fight of African government or any government. It's fine if a government votes or a government fights on behalf of the people, one hopes. But in most cases, our governments are captured and they are not really fighting. Because if we talk about the people in the diaspora, in the Americas and the Caribbean and so on, the West African governments, all the way from Angola to the rest of West Africa, would have stood up and fight. The African governments as a collective of black or Africans, the AAU should have been spearheading this fight on behalf of its people. But most governments, as we've seen, they don't do that. Now, the second comment came about those who are powerful, whether it is the West or whether it is within the whole African context, those that are running governments, if they are powerful and you are marginalized, you are a small group, those who are powerful makes the law. So it is for marginalized to first organize themselves, to build the cohesion within groups. Because even the challenges, for instance, that we've been facing over the years, is the way some people are captured and they sell out, or they no longer, or they want to go for the short gains, the immediate personal gains at the expense of the larger community or larger population. So therefore, that cohesion, that people must really look at the long run, at the long haul, be prepared to wage this struggle for another 100 or so years, but be committed to do it for the next generation. And that is what we, for instance, as Namas and Hereros have done very well over the last 30 years, is to keep people together, is avoid people to love the material good at the expense of justice. And I think the defiance that they brought even on government here to the realization that they can't continue, even if they are the ones to determine the laws or to implement the law, we can't actually continue without us. The German government is the same. It has realized that they can't continue. Somehow you need to solve the issue because it's going to continue for years. And we are prepared. We always tell them it's not a secret that we will do all legal means. We'll push the two governments for negotiation. But if push comes to shove, we know where the land is, for instance. Our land is just right here. People know exactly where they were moved from. The good thing with African people are folklore and things we learn at the fire. It has to do with your history, where you are born and which places and so on. The names of places is a reflection of who first was born there or buried there and all that. So we know what landscapes we occupied. So if West come to West, the next campaign is really to occupy the land, to go back to implement the restitution ourselves rather than relying on governments to dictate when they are actually trying to sell us out. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. We're going to probably take a 5-minute break because we kind of really extensively focused on these